Hello and welcome back. It is one of the most awkward moments in a career, and that is the annual review. Now, they are necessary, of course, to measure performance, but there could be a way to make them more efficient, less weird, and more successful as well. And with me is Rachel Ernst, the head of HR for Reflektive, a company that's trying to kind of disrupt, I guess, the annual review.
Exactly.
Is what you're trying to do. So give me an overview. What is Reflektive doing?
Yeah, exactly. And thanks so much for having me here,
Sure.
Jane. So Reflektive is a strategic people management platform. It's a pretty big description here, but basically we're trying to really evolve the whole annual performance review process. It induces fear and anxiety a lot for employees. You probably remember some of your more challenging performance reviews. And so we're really trying to change the face of it to get back to why do people have performance reviews, and it's really to help coach them along the way and help them grow and develop their careers. So we're really trying to partner with organizations so that they can evolve that for their people.
And reach the goal of what it's meant to do, because it really does serve a purpose. I mean, it's good to sit down, to talk, to critique, you know, and find out goals, communicate. It's always good in the workplace. So what kind of things did you find out about where was the annual review going wrong?
Yeah, I guess there are a few things, and I think about frequency and I think about content. Right? So most organizations right now are doing annual reviews. Well, it's called annual reviews. So they do it once a year, maybe twice a year. And so what happens then is when you have a time that you're supposed to give feedback, then you hold all the difficult feedback because you don't want to have a hard conversation until that one time in the year or two times in the year. So that's what managers typically do. And then it induces a lot of fear from people because they know that something's probably coming, their manager has maybe been holding back, and then they're going to hear it in their performance review. So that's one problem. And then the other problem is just knowing how to share difficult feedback. So they wait on it because they don't know how to do it. So what we're trying to do is help companies evolve themselves away from once or twice a year. So most of the companies that are on our platform, when we look at the data, they go from 1 time a year to 2 times to 4 times a year. So the longer they're with us, the more frequent they're making sure people are having these conversations.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And if you have an annual review, you may make the changes immediately, then you kind of slip back into those old habits. Whereas if you have a more regular review, that tends to kind of deeply ingrain those changes that you need to make.
Exactly.
Easier, I think.
When organizations say, hey, we're going to do this 4 times a year, it's basically the expectation that I have of you as a manager is that you're having these on a regular basis. And by the way, we're also going to support you through content, whether it's in our tool or training, that kind of like feeds you different small learnings. So as you're having this conversation, Reflektive will say, hey, here's a good way to bring up some challenging feedback. And it'll prompt managers to do that.
What did you find out about bias in the workplace?
So there are a lot of different biases that can happen, and it can both be from a self perspective and it can be from a manager perspective. So a self perspective could be an underinflated bias. So if I'm writing my performance review, I may tend to underestimate the things that I have done, and I'm too humble to show my accomplishments, so I won't put them all in my review. And then what happens with the manager is then they see that and they don't see all the great things that I've done as an employee, so I haven't supported myself. The manager's bias could be something like a recency. So this happens a lot with annual reviews. They're only going to think about things that have happened in the past month. That's really going to stick out to them. Right. Or similarity bias. That's another thing. If you remind me of myself, I'm more likely to give you positive feedback than if you're very different from me.
Men and women, how do they perform and receive the annual review?
Right, and when managers, so I think about that in terms of what are managers' tendencies when they write reviews for male employees versus female employees. And what we typically see is when male employees are given feedback, then it tends to be more about what they've accomplished. And when female employees are given feedback, it's about how they went about accomplishing it. So it's more behavioral and how they notice people navigate versus what the actual output was of their work. And then in terms of when women fill out their reviews, then they'll tend to say, hey, this accomplishment that I gained, that's actually, I'm going to attribute it to a whole group of people. It's not just about me. And what men may tend to do, and these of course are generalizations, is they'll attribute success more to themselves than to the group that they've worked with. So it's really interesting, right, these tendencies that come out.
Now the companies that have been using your service, what kind of changes have they seen or improvements have they seen in the HR and the annual review process?
When companies start with us, one of the things we like them to do is have a performance, like a benchmark survey. So we want them to say, okay, how are things going right now for your employees? And then survey them again and find out what improved. So I always like to start with, okay, what are the numbers? And there are two things that they typically see. The first thing is they evolve towards more frequent conversation. So that's one thing that we find is really useful. And then the other one is, when you're an employee, you want to hear from your manager, how am I doing and where am I going? So those are the things that we're seeing employees find answers to as they continue to be on Reflektive.
Thank you very much, Rachel, for coming in and explaining Reflektive for us.
Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you as well for joining us. We'll be right back.